Welcome into episode 318 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. The Bruins have extended their series with the Florida Panthers, winning Game 5 by a score of 2-1. So the series now shifts back up to Boston, and Bridget and Scott opening shifts as the Bruins stave off elimination.
Bridget, you want to go first?
Sure. I thought yours would be natural to go first because they go back up to Boston and maybe they extend the series and give Marchand time to get back in.
I mean, sure, I can go first. I just thought because yours was more related to the game. Mine's more abstract, but yeah, we saw a video of Brad Marchand around the team for Game 5. He traveled with them. He was on the ice for morning skate. He was ruled out ahead of time, so even though he was out there was no chance of him playing. I think we knew that. Rich Keefe had reported that he was going to miss Game 4 and 5. I think just the concussion protocol, it takes too long to clear it for him to be back for 5. But clearly, his presence meant something to the team. Montgomery referenced it that yes, they had enough motivation on their own, facing elimination, just trying to keep their season alive. But he did say, extending the series, giving him a chance to get back is a little extra motivation. And a few of the players touched on that. Morgan Geekie said it was just great to have him on the trip. McAvoy and Pasternak at the podium after the game said that, he was in the room between periods. He gave a couple speeches. The team tweeted out video of him, kind of pumping everyone up before the game. Kind of going through his usual pregame routine in the hallway there where he's bouncing off guys and all that.
Except for he looked so much smaller because he didn't have his skates on. So everybody looked like giants compared to him in that video.
Yeah, especially when he's next to Brendan Carlo.
Yeah, he's like a whole foot shorter.
Yeah. But it felt to me like the Bruins are finally able to turn the page on all the controversy, all the discussion about the sucker punch and the lack of discipline and how are they going to respond and the bad call on Bennett's goal and all this stuff that could easily be excuses, distractions if they gave into it. It seemed like they changed the focus just to themselves. And I think Marchand was part of that. You heard words like positivity and energy and happy. Marchand was happy. It just felt like this team was in a much better headspace than they've been. And maybe, part of that might be our fault as media focusing on all that other stuff. That's part of the distraction. But it really felt like they were able to kind of block that out and just focus on winning a hockey game. And now they extend the series and give Marchand a chance to come back. By all accounts, it sounds like there's a pretty decent chance he'll be cleared in time for Game 6 on Friday. So, a big effort from the Bruins, and I think Marchand helped set that tone.
Yeah, and Swayman during his interview in the locker room said Marchand's jersey's hanging right there. We expect him to be back in it very soon. So I know that all the guys are pretty optimistic that extending the series means that he might be able to get back in either in Game 6 or if it goes even longer, Game 7. But Montgomery said it's still taking it day by day because he still has different things he needs to clear. Probably talking about concussion protocol, but obviously we haven't confirmed that it's a concussion. The team hasn't confirmed that it's a concussion. So, and my opening shift has to do with Charlie McAvoy, who had his best game of the playoffs in Game 5. He hadn't had a point yet in the series. He got a assist on the first goal of the game that Geekie scored. He scored his own goal, the game-winning goal. That did get reviewed for goaltender interference, but this time went the Bruins' way. We could talk about that later, but I want to stick to McAvoy and his performance. And he had 6 shots on goal. he clearly got the initiative that we're taking shots from when we're getting them through from everywhere and just trying to create more opportunities. The Bruins did outshoot Florida in the first period. They ended up getting outshot the next two periods, but they came out strong and it gave them the lead. And they were able to hold off Florida as they attempted to tie it again, and it came really close a bunch of times. But and I'm sure we'll get to Swayman and his role in everything and how good he was. But I think this was the best game that McAvoy played. He was involved physically, making hits at the very end of the game when it was 6-on-5. Florida had the extra attacker on trying to score. McAvoy had an incredible shift, few clears, blocks, checks, and he helped kill down the clock so that the Bruins guaranteed they would go back to Boston. So I think he had a good all-around game, and it was good to see because we've kind of been a little bit curious what was going on with him because he wasn't playing like himself necessarily, and this was a Charlie McAvoy game that he had a huge impact.
Yeah, I want to do like a full breakdown just of his last two shifts at some point. Like they were incredible. Like honestly, to me, even more impressive than the goal and or the assist. I think Brian might be frozen. So
oh no, not again.
Yeah,
we'll let him back in at some point. But
yeah, we were worried about this. Brian had some internet issues before we started. We hoped that they had been solved, but
well, we can talk about those two shifts if you want.
Yeah,
now because
sure, yeah, might as well. So yeah, all game long, McAvoy was more assertive, and the 6 shots, like yes, there was more of a willingness just to shoot. There's clearly more of a shot first mentality, but they're also with purpose. Like the goal is obviously him charging down the slot. He had a couple others where he's coming in and pinching down. He was shooting for sticks. He had a couple that, attempts that obviously don't go down as a shot and goal for him, but attempts that were tipped on by teammates. I think Geeky had one, JVR had one, but yeah, those final 2 shifts. So he actually commits like 3 minutes left. He commits an icing. He's just barely behind the red line, but Panthers pull Bobrovsky at that point, win the draw, but McAvoy immediately blocks a Sam Reinhart shot and clears the zone, gets a change. He gets about 50 seconds of rest on the bench, and then comes back out for another D-zone draw off after the Panthers take their time out. And so right off the draw, the puck goes around the net. McAvoy wins the race to the loose puck, clears it. 10 seconds later, puck back in the zone. McAvoy steals it from Carter Verhaeghe, flips out to the neutral zone. 20 seconds after that, loose puck in the crease. McAvoy dives at it, whacks it out of the zone. Stays out. Now he's been on the ice about a minute 15, minute 20. End of a long shift. Under a minute to go. And there's a puck up the boards. And he seals off Carter Verhaeghe. Good check along the wall. And then while tied up, just dives and pokes it past an oncoming Brandon Montour to David Pastrnak for another clear. Like it looked like, we talk about it, and it's kind of a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, about sometimes playoff hockey just comes down to who wants it more. Like that whole shift, really those 2 shifts, was McAvoy just wanting it more. Like he just simply was not going to lose that battle for that puck. And yes, you would have loved to have seen that Charlie McAvoy more often early in the series. That's fair. But you saw it with your backs up against the wall facing elimination, and hopefully you see it more going forward.
Yeah, and Coach, I just want to read this last quote about McAvoy before we get back to Brian, hi, Brian. Brian's back. So Coach after the game said that McAvoy on the bench was more vocal and he said he's a quiet guy usually, but that he was more vocal on the bench in Game 5, and he saw him talking to different people, The quote was, in game 4, Charlie asserted himself, but wasn't as clean with the puck. He's extremely competitive, kind of quiet, but you saw him talking a lot on the bench. And the goal was huge. So that's what coach had to say after the game about McAvoy.
So for my opening shift, it's all about the vulnerability of a game 5. I mentioned this online before the game. We have seen this Bruins team be in the opposite situation many times before. In fact, since 2004, I've watched the Bruins have a 3-1 series lead 6 times where it ended up going 7 games, which means 6 games, game 5s in Boston where the Bruins were unable to finish off the opponent. And then when you're the team that has the lead in the series and you lose that game 5, you, as a fan, you sit there and think, oh, great. Well, now you got to go back to the opposing city. They're probably going to win because they have all their fans behind them, and it's going to go 7 and anything can happen. And I think that's true for this series. Like, for the majority of the first 4 games, Florida was the better team, but a series of 7 games. And if I'm a Panthers fan or a Panthers player or anybody who covers the team, that's a game that you have to win. You have to come out and find a way to win. You don't want to give a team life. You don't want to have to travel unnecessarily back to another city for game 6. It's annoying as hell. You lose the ability to gain some rest for the following round. Now you have to start facing questions from media. Maybe there's a little bit of doubt. Maybe you're sweating more. Quite frankly, you have to do more now to win the series. And obviously the biggest cliche is that the 4th game is the hardest to win. But if you're the Panthers, you have now welcomed a potential headache, a potential migraine. Even if they win this series in 6 or 7, which they still very well may do, you know, it's not ideal. You could have finished it earlier. So from the Bruins perspective, they did exactly what they had to do. They went down there, they kept their season alive. They played desperate. They had a shot first mentality, which is very important. I know there's a lot talking about the quality versus quantity shot selection. Well, they kind of went the route of quantity in period 1 last night, and I think it worked out well for them, because even if you're taking a lot of shots and they're not high danger, you're still making the opposition run around in their D zone. They're getting out of position. You're forcing them to defend and get uncomfortable. So even if a shot is not labeled for the back of the net, it's still, you're still making the other team work, and they're not on offense when they're defending. So ultimately, good on the Bruins for winning game 5. They have been on the other side of that last year against Florida, obviously, this year against the Maple Leafs. So, and it's very, very daunting when you're down in a series 3-1 to be like, oh, how are we going to beat this team 3 times in a row? But when you break it down game by game, it's quite simple. Steal game 5, go back home, try to use the energy of the building and the momentum that you have, even though the Bruins haven't been great at home lately, but win game 6 at home, game 7, anything can happen. So, and unfortunately for the Panthers and their fans, you have to have these hypotheticals now because the job wasn't complete in game 5.
Yeah, desperation is a real thing, and it's hard to manufacture no matter how much players want to and try to and say, you know, we have to match their desperation. Like, when you're actually facing the end of your season, that's just a very different level of desperation than being down 2-1 or being up 3-1 and trying to match the other team. Like, you can't really fake it. Like, you know, that wasn't a do or die game for the Panthers. And yes, they wanted to treat it like one, just like the Bruins wanted to treat game 5 last round like one, but it's hard to do. Now, the one thing I would say, if you're the Panthers right now that you're looking at, is just in the last round, in the first round against Tampa, they were up 3-0, didn't get the sweep, lost game 4, but then they responded. They bounced back with a 6-1 win in game 5. So they only had the one slip up. They didn't let Tampa win 2 and get momentum. So Florida, I'm sure, will be drawing on that experience, saying, look, we figured out how to bounce back and bring it our second chance at eliminating a team. So if you're the Bruins, you have to bring what you just brought in game 5, right? Like, Brian, you mentioned they haven't been very good at home for whatever reason. Like, they have to play game 6 just like they played game 5. And, if they get Marchand back, it's like that should be a huge boost. But don't let anyone else on the team have like a subconscious like feel we got our captain back. Like, now he's here to take control. Like, no, you won game 5 because everyone was pulling on the rope, and your best players, especially Charlie McAvoy, was outstanding. Like, that has to happen again.
Yeah. And like you said, maybe Marchand comes back. That's good news. Obviously, he's a good penalty killer. He's a top 6 forward in your lineup. But yeah, you can't just don't change what you did, especially in the first period of game 5. And another huge factor as to why this season for Boston is not over is Jeremy Swayman. Jeremy Swayman saved. I don't know, Scott, if you have the analytics, but he had to have a few goals saved above expected, or like if you look at the advanced stats from the game, expected goals to actual goals, I'm sure was higher by quite a bit.
It was, but I have to give a lot of credit to the Bruins defense too. They really gave up very little in terms of high danger chances. Like, that was a great defensive effort. So Swayman was great, yes, but I mean, 5-on-5. Listen, natural stat trick. It's the best we've got. Maybe not always perfect, but 5-on-5, they credited the Panthers with 3 high danger chances, and I think it was only 2 on goal, maybe 3. 3.
Well, probably the
Barkov
total one.
3 total on goal. So
Yep.
yeah, like, and Swayman, so Swayman, yes, had to make some great saves. Reinhardt in the closing seconds obviously stands out. But I thought that was a really great defensive effort too.
Yeah, it was. It for sure was. But there's plenty of goalies in this league that wouldn't have made that stop on Reinhardt in the last 10 seconds. And in a few of the other saves that he made, especially helping out the penalty kill. And yeah, he's just been such a huge difference for the Bruins since the beginning of the playoffs. And you're probably not seeing Linus Ullmark again, and at least not if this series, like if the Bruins make it out of this series, maybe you do. But it's Swayman. It's going to be Swayman. And if you're seeing Ullmark again, that's probably a really bad sign. It probably means there's a blowout going on, or something bad has happened, because you're sticking with Swayman until you are out of the playoffs, I guess, is the best way to put it. But I didn't know what you guys thought of him in game 5.
I mean, he's been amazing. And again, something else I noticed heading into game 5, and I mentioned that if this trend continued, it might likely be the end of the season for the Bruins. But ironically, it wasn't the end of the season, and they still fell victim to this category or this trend. The Bruins have now scored 2 goals or less in 7 of their last 8 games, dating back to game 5 against the Maple Leafs. So what I had said yesterday was, if that trend continues, there's a chance that their season probably doesn't continue. They won 2-1, so their season does continue, but that trend is still intact. So it's a long way of me saying Swayman has kept him in. There has been one of these games where they haven't been scoring a lot, where they're not in the game. So, I shouldn't say that. There were a couple of games against Florida that kind of got away at the end. But my point, though, like he's been really strong, and last night was no different, because he's not getting a ton of run support, even in their victories. Their last 3 wins, 2 goals against Florida last night, 2 goals in game 7. So, aside from game 1 against Florida, it hasn't been a lot of offense for Swayman. So he's had to be great, and last night was no different. He was nails.
Yeah, I will say, like, wasn't a perfect game. I mean, Florida's 1 goal, he kind of dropped a long shot, that was in his glove and out, and kept play alive. But yeah, other than that, he was very good, and the Bruins needed him to be. Like, games 2, 3, 4, as we've said, like, certainly wasn't his fault. He was very low on the list, but they also weren't his best. Like those games weren't the same as his first 7 starts this postseason. Gave up 9 goals in games 2 and 3. Game 4, he gives up 1 goal that I'm sure he wants back. Lundell beats him short side from outside the dot. This was what you needed from him, and I do think it was. It's easy to look at it now and say it was an easy call to stick with him, but I'm sure there was some debate. Like, I'm sure the Bruins at least considered it. Right? You've lost 3 in a row. We talked about it in the last podcast. I said I would have gone to Allmark. I would have shaken it up just because I thought you needed something. They didn't. They stick with Swayman. Bridget, to your point, it's clearly his net for this whole run. Like, however long it goes, I think he's getting chances to bounce back. He's the guy, and he's rewarded them, giving him those chances to bounce back because he did it last night.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Season could be over if they pull the trigger on making the change and this just doesn't go the same way for Allmark as it did for Swayman. So they didn't overcompensate by seeing 3 losses and trying to switch things up and because it really wasn't Swayman, like you said. It would have been different if those losses were like just awful starts for him, but obviously that wasn't how it played out, and they made the right call with sticking with them, and now they live to fight another day.
Real quick, just to jump back to McAvoy, did his goal last night seem familiar to either of you by any chance? Any deja vu by any chance at all on that goal? No?
I can't think of anything right now, no.
Scott, you?
Obviously it should, but no.
Okay.
Nothing immediately came to mind.
The overtime against Edmonton? No.
It dates a little bit further back. I tweeted out from the account, so you guys can go see it. I pasted it together. It is identical. Not the pass he received, but the play and the visual, the shot, everything is a mirror image to his goal in the 2017 World Junior Gold Medal game against Canada. Absolute mirror image. It's like very, very uncanny. I noticed that last night, and I was like, "Where have I seen this before?" Because it's yeah. Anyway, yeah.
That's a good pull. That's a deep cut.
Yeah,
right?
And by the way, there was a guy with his foot in the crease too, like there, like potential goalie interference.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good segue, Bridget. So obviously, a big storyline from the game last night is the goal that McAvoy scores and the goalie interference challenge by the Panthers. Now, I'll be honest. I'm surprised that Paul Maurice and the Panthers challenged it simply for the fact that if listeners don't know, I'm sure many of you do, but these teams have extremely extensive, astute video teams that are in the locker room on the 9th floor watching everything. So when a team challenges a goal, 99% of the time, it's like they're seeing something that's either obvious that we're all seeing, or there's a small percentage of the time where it's like nobody else sees it, but they notice something and they page down to the bench to challenge something. So I'm always pessimistic when it comes to a goalie challenge because I'm like, oh, it's probably going to come back because they must have seen something. But it was so obvious if anybody had eyes. And I think Bruins fans, Panthers fans, neutral fans all could agree. It was clear as day that it was Oliver Ekman-Larsson's stick that knocked out Bobrovsky's stick, and with no contact from Heinen, which was the big difference from the Bennett goal. There was contact with Coyle. So I was surprised that they challenged it, not seeing that it was Ekman-Larsson's stick that knocked it out of Bobrovsky's hand, knowing that it's a power play for the Bruins if they get it wrong. With how good these video teams are, I was surprised that they didn't notice that before challenging.
Well, it's worth a Hail Mary if you know they got the last one wrong. Like if you know that it could go either way. And I will say Heinen, like there was a little bit of contact with Heinen's foot. into the skate, but it didn't seem like
not just his foot, but his Heinen's stick actually got under Bobrovsky's skate, and then but Bobrovsky was able to get reset and square again. Yeah. So I wonder if that was as much what they were looking at as the stick getting knocked out / quite frankly, Bobrovsky just dropped his stick.
Yep.
Yep. But before we started recording, I was listening to Morning Brew, and Razor thought it was goalie interference. Now he also thought Bennett's goal was goalie interference. They made a good point, well, Razor especially, that it seems like the NHL has changed its standard in the playoffs. Because, Brian, you're right. Like, usually when coaches challenge, they know. They see it, they're confident, and they get it overturned far more often than not. When coaches have challenged goalie interference this postseason, they are 1 for 5. So it seems the NHL is like, just for the most part, they're just going to stick with the call on the ice unless it's like so blatant. But listen, we all thought Bennett's goal was blatant. Like, we thought that was about as blatant as it gets, and they still let it stand. So, Pat Maroon, when we talked to him before Game 5, he pointed this out, and someone went back and found the video. He had a goal earlier this season in Minnesota, called back for basically the same exact thing that Sam Bennett did. Maroon was on top of the crease. There's a defenseman in front of him. He gives the defenseman a shove. He lands on the goalie. Maroon buries the puck. Like, almost identical to what Sam Bennett did. Opposing team challenged Maroon's goal, and it came off the board. But now you get in the playoffs, and the goal stands. Like, and that's all the NHL situation. That's not a ref-to-ref thing. Like, that is the league office, the league replay officials making that call and seemingly changing their standard for the playoffs.
Just why?
I don't know. Hey, to Don Sweeney's point, like, it would be great to get to talk to him, but they're not available to the media, so no one really knows.
Doesn't make any sense to me why it would change. Like, I understand letting like, a little bit of extra pushing and shoving go, like not like keeping the whistles away a little bit for other penalties, but it's a goal review. Like, that should always be handled the same way. I don't know. You might call holding a little bit differently in the playoffs, but I wouldn't change anything with the goal review process because it just opens everything up for criticism. And like you said, Sweeney mentioned, like, no one has the ability to hold anybody accountable in those situations because nobody talks to anyone. No one talks to the league. I don't know. So I thought that I didn't think it was going to get over. Well, I'll put it this way. After the last goalie interference review, I thought anything could happen. But in my mind, if I was the color commentator on that, I would have been saying of what Brian said about Ekman-Larsson. And it seemed like the broadcast didn't actually notice that happened until a few minutes after they had their rules analysts come back on for a sec and be like, oh yeah, Ekman-Larsson pulled the stick out of his hands. But it was pretty easy to see in the slowed down version that he kind of hooks the stick right out of Bobrovsky's hands. And I did think Bobrovsky dropped it, just knew the contact was there, dropped the stick, and was hoping to get the call, but it didn't work out that way this time. And they counted and ends up being the game winning goal.
Scott, I kind of want to let you cook here. Have you guys talked about the ref blown to play dead on Bobrovsky? Taking a shot from the wrist from the blue line off his shoulder pad.
He hurt his shoulder. He could have had a boo-boo.
Isn't this what John Cooper was talking about last series?
I mean, I understand referees, sometimes when a player is down for a significant amount of time, which by the way, I've seen that happen and then allow the play to continue. But that was insane. That was I think everybody, all hockey fans were like, buddy, what are you doing there?
If you watched the Nesson intermission, which you had to do it online, but I had it, Sophia asked Billy, she was like, hey, do you know what happened with that whistle? Because everyone in the press box is really confused. And they said that it was just like an inadvertent whistle, but still there was no, I was like, oh, there's going to be a penalty or nothing. It was just a whistle.
Yeah, I mean, to try to get in their heads, I guess, I'm assuming they thought the shot hit him in the mask and that there might have been a head injury situation, which is cause to blow the whistle. The problem is, like, when a goalie gets hit in the mask with a shot, you hear that crack. Like, that is a very distinct sound when a shot hits a goalie's mask. You didn't hear that, and Bobrovsky doesn't grab at his head or anything. So it's like it's just mind blowing. Like I don't know. I can't really imagine anything else to say about it. It's like just seemingly just like not paying attention, honestly.
But it's just like I just feel like officials should like if you're not sure on something, you should let something go.
Right, like at least like give it a second or two. Like see,
yeah,
like if all of a sudden Bobrovsky starts stumbling or reaches for his head, like okay, but yeah, it was like so immediate.
That's a pretty drastic thing to stop a play like that in the ozone when a team's kind of humming. So it's just I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it's you have to be like 200% certain about stuff like that. Otherwise, you're just kind of like flexing your authority on a game where there's no need for it.
On the same lines of like players looking like they might be more hurt than they really are and like reffing, and this series has had quite a few dives. And they finally got Lundell for one.
Jim Montgomery is having a field day on the bench.
Yes. He's going to get it. I think he's going to get an Oscar for that acting performance because he was pretending to dive. And he was diving forward. Then he was diving backwards. He had a full range. But so that was actually the one that they didn't call. So they call Lundell. Geeky cross-checked him, but Lundell goes really easy to the ice. So they call both of them. And then Lorei gets a penalty, and he thought Luostarinen dove. So he's mimicking, and if you haven't seen this, like you have to try to find it on Twitter. It's everywhere. It became a meme very quickly. I'm sure most of our listeners have seen it by now, either on the broadcast or on Twitter. But it's amazing. It's an amazing like 5 or 6 seconds of video that is going to live on forever.
Yeah, and the Lorei one, I thought that could have easily been the same thing. Like call the because he did hook him, call the penalty and the embellishment. Because Luostarinen looked like, you know, when like you see like a kid like swinging on his like mom or dad's arm, right? Like grabs on and like swings like while they walk. Like that's what it looked like. It was like he just like latched onto Lorei's stick and went for a ride. Like just went for a nice little swing.
And at least Montgomery, without even saying words, got his point across. That it was but like this is another thing that's annoying when you're watching hockey, because and Montgomery talked about it after the game. He said it's become way more common. He said back when he played, there was only one guy who could do it well, and everybody else, it was like no, either wouldn't try it or wasn't good enough at it to get away with it. And you see it a lot now. Like this series, and people can be critical of certain players around the league for trying it a lot. I mean, I've heard people say the Leafs do it a lot. I didn't think they really did it in that series. This series with Florida has had more dives for sure than the Bruins first round series. And it just kind of blurs the line of, okay, how much of that was contact, like versus how much was faking it. And it I don't know, it takes away from the game. It's very difficult for the refs to know which time someone's diving and which time they're not. I'm guessing that before game 5, there was a conversation because it had happened a few times earlier in the series, including in game 4. And it was Lundell and it was Luostarinen that were doing it earlier in the series. I'm guessing there was a, hey, just so you know, if you see this guy fall down drawing a penalty, it may have been a little bit of embellishment. So, but if you're a player and you're good at it, there's no harm in doing it. Like, so what if you end up in the box? Like, they don't usually call embellishment by itself. It's usually a matching penalty. So you're at the very least going 4-on-4, but if it works out the way you expect it to, you get a power play. So it's really frustrating that the there's not a whole lot that deters people from doing it, and it's hard to get right.
Well, this is a product, and every team does it. This is not a Panthers thing. It's not a Bruins thing. It's not a Maple Leafs thing. It's every team does it because it's the way that the league is nowadays. The minute that the NHL, I want to probably dating back to the 04-05 lockout, so they came back in 05-06. That year when they came back is when they implemented these new penalty thresholds. And it was basically, if somebody taps you, it's a power play because the league was trying to drive for, they had an initiative to drive more offense for the product, for viewership, blah, blah, blah. Well, what that did was it allowed players to say, okay, if they're going to call everything, then we're going to sit there and we're going to snap our head back. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean, even the early 2000s before that lockout, it did you no good to snap your head back because refs weren't calling it. You could pull a guy down the ice and your back and they weren't calling holding. So the second that the league changed the rules, over time, players started to learn, all right, well, we'll just start flopping. And now you have kids in the NHL that are 18 years old. So they've grown up with this, watching this product, right? So now it's kind of like I think that's what you're seeing. And if you're the officials, okay, so the players are going to try to flop here and there, all teams, all players, but it's to the officials to have a feel for the game and know know when a player is doing it. And it's not so much that you should, if a player's flopping, to always call them for embellishment. Just don't call a thing. Recognize that the player's flopping, the other player's probably not doing much of an infraction. Just let it go. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a league issue, and it is what it is at this point. You just have to kind of grow numb to it.
I do think both of the times it happened in Game 5 though was penalties on the Bruins, but also was embellishment. Like both were true. I think on the Geeky cross check and the Lori penalty as well. I think both were true. So I mean, it just ends up 4-4. At least they got the first one right, because sometimes like it's easy to miss those.
I mean, the league is absolutely a joke with this stuff. There's no way around it. It's again, I when I watch these games, I try to go numb to it because if I'll go crazy watching the inconsistency with the calls, watching I'll go insane. So I just, for my own mental health, I just try to understand there's going to be blown calls, there's going to be inconsistencies, and that's the league now.
Yeah, and I mean, the flopping has been going on for a long time. Like, Montgomery can say it didn't happen much in his day, but I don't know. I remember Canadiens teams in the early 2000s that were doing this. Like, and honestly, I feel like I remember a time when it was worse. And the NHL has occasionally cracked down. Like, they went through a stretch, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago where they did start to find guys who embellished. And there were some diving calls that were just their own penalties that, weren't just matching embellishment. So maybe it's time for one of those renewed focuses, because it feels like that's kind of what it takes. Like when stuff like this goes in cycles is, you crack down on it. There starts to be less of it. Then the crackdown kind of stops and, you don't care about as much and it starts to come back. So maybe we're in that like upswing now where it's, this off season going into next year, it's time for another crackdown. But, it comes in waves. And to me, it's been around my whole life. So I can't really recall an era that Montgomery does where it wasn't happening.
Well, he is a little bit older than you, Scott. So
yeah, but like he's, he played like the era that, that like I remember watching as a kid and as a teenager. I guess maybe I just have like a different memory of it, or maybe it's just like specifically a Canadiens bias thing. But like I remember those teams, like Mike Ribeiro. I mean, that guy was flopping all over the place. Like he was acting like he was dying in the.
But it wasn't
playoffs.
Yeah, but it wasn't an every team, every player thing like it is now. I mean, it's part of the game now, especially when a team has not had the benefit of the whistle that game, where the other team's getting power plays and they're not, they'll start to try to throw their heads back even more. So it's a tactic. I mean, all due respect, like I see McAvoy do it all the time, and McAvoy plays the game a hard way, but they all do it. And yeah, Scott, like Ribeiro was notorious for it, and there were definitely guys who did it a lot back in the day, but I don't think it was a league wide, team wide. Every team had multiple guys that did it. I just think it's a different product. But in any event, we're kind of getting off the rails here. Back to the game. Marchand's out of the lineup the last couple of games, and really it's kind of almost the last 3 games because of losing him early on in game 3. Nobody would sit here and say the Bruins are a better team without Brad Marchand, but when a team is forced to play without one of their top players, you have to find different line combinations, different guys step up. With his absence, have the Bruins found, obviously he goes right back into the top 6 when he comes back. But my question is, are there any combinations they've gone to in the last few games, specifically game 5, where you might want to keep that together, or combinations at least, if not a whole line, combinations? And I'll give you guys one. I like Coyle and Frederick together. I know Heinen played with them last game. Maybe you put Marchand with them. But Coyle and Frederick have a lot of experience playing together, not so much this year, but in past years. I don't know. Something to be said there.
I liked Pasta with Geeky and DeBrusque. I liked Geeky and DeBrusque, obviously both with points in game 5. Geeky's he had 4 goals already this playoffs. He's been playing really well. So he stepped up, moving to a higher role. And DeBrusque is the leading goal scorer for Boston throughout the playoffs. So those guys, I think, have found something out with each other. And they've had different guys on with them. And it's been rotated a little bit with Geeky coming in when they switched Zacha over to wing. But I think that's a combination that's looked pretty good. And that doesn't require you changing where Marchand goes necessarily. So
yeah, I think that combination has worked pretty well. Feel like Geeky's just been a better fit next to Pastrnak than Zacha was earlier this postseason. I also think Zacha's looked pretty good on that third line with Brezzo and Van Riemsdyk. Like, not that he's setting the world on fire, but I feel like he's made more of an impact. I think that line's had some good looks. And if you're going to put Marchand with Coyle and Frederick, which is an idea that I like, then maybe it's either Heinen, Zacha, Brezzo, or maybe Van Riemsdyk stays there and Heinen goes to the 4th line and someone there comes out. Like, there's some options, because I also think Heinen's played pretty well since coming back in too. I think you see him winning some battles. He definitely looks better than he did in the Toronto series, when obviously, as we know now, he was battling some sort of injury. He looks pretty healthy to me since coming back in. So
it was big for the Bruins to get him back the same first game that Marchand missed because of the penalty killing. I think that he's been doing pretty good penalty killing. And when you lose Marchand, you lose like one of your top penalty killers. So
yeah, for sure. But even just 5-on-5, like even just helping create offensive chances, I think this looks more like regular season Heinen than the one who, quite frankly, was like invisible against Toronto.
And because we're talking about like forward group combinations, I did want to mention that the D pairs, like there was, I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you did, the time on ice for the D pairs after the game, but Laurie only had 3 shifts in the third period. He played under 2 minutes in the third period. He got his time really cut back. So I don't know. I don't see them changing him out for someone else, but he did only play 11 minutes of ice time, which is not a lot. So his minutes were down. Peak only played about like 13 and a half minutes. So there were some guys taking a lot of the minutes. Lindholm had the most. Lindholm, McAvoy, and Carlo obviously all up there pretty high in minutes. And then, Laurie just didn't get too much of ice time in the third.
Yeah, there's a clear shortening of the bench. Lori Peak had played together most of the night, so little shift in the pairings as well as a lot of Lindholm McAvoy together, and then Wotherspoon Carlo, which is a combination we've seen at times, but not super often. But yeah, Bruins more or less just rolled the top four in the third period, protecting a lead. And it worked. Like, credit to those guys: McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Wotherspoon. But yeah, I don't think Lori's lineup spot's in danger. He's certainly been good enough to stay in, and in situations where you're going to need to create offense, you absolutely want him in there. But protecting a lead's a little different. I think that's where there's still don't fully trust him, at least not in a playoff game, and that's understandable. If you have other guys stepping up who are doing the job well, then you can do that. You can cut his minutes in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see Wotherspoon and Peak back together as a pair the last few games. You kind of scratch your head about why that just wasn't the case. The second Peak was able to come back into the lineup, but yeah, I like the Bruins' ability if they have the lead to, yes, you have to kind of spot Lowry, but they've been behind the Panthers so much the last since game one that well, I guess I shouldn't say that. Game 4, they were up to nothing. But yeah, you just got to pick and choose your spots carefully with him.
Yeah, and
Bridget
I think
Scott, we asked our listeners.
No, we asked our listeners what the poll on Twitter.
Yes, and I was gonna ask if you guys felt the same way they do right now.
Our first one was, will the series shift back to Boston? 62% of people said yes, and we know that that's happening. So that was a very optimistic group of people that voted. And then this one is, will the Bruins force Game 7? And still early on, but 80% yes. So once again, some optimism from people in Boston. I think a large majority of our audience on Twitter is probably Bostonians, Bruins fans, but seems to be some optimism after the Game 5 win.
I mean, I picked Panthers in 6 before the series, so I guess stick with that. But yeah, you certainly got to feel pretty good about the Bruins after Game 5, especially with Marchand coming back. I do worry about this team's struggles at home, which remain just like unexplainable, honestly. But
I'm guessing they stayed in a
very
hotel.
Real. Yeah, they stayed in a hotel before Game 4 and they still lost. So
yeah, but Game 4 was much better than Game 3.
Sure. I need to see it though. Like, I don't know why they struggle so much at home, but maybe now, again, facing elimination helps them. Maybe the desperation is there once again. It should be. So they've given themselves a chance, and I think that's all you can ask for. Like, as Brian said earlier, it's like you can't. Yeah, you're down 3-1, but you can't win 3 games at once. So you go down, you win Game 5. You just had to win 1 game. Now it's the same thing on Friday. Like, we can sit here and say, we expect the Panthers to bounce back, and it's still going to be tough to win 3 in a row, and Panthers are still the favorite to win the series, but you just got to win 1 more game. Like, just win 1 more on Friday night. So definitely some encouraging signs from Game 5. Like, just seeing the Bruins have more offensive zone time, get more shots on net, like, give themselves a reason to believe that they're not just completely overmatched and have to hang on for dear life and rely on Swayman to stand on his head. Like, this was a complete team effort. They got more offensive chances. They had more possession. They limited Florida's high danger chances. As I said, I don't, Swayman made some great saves, but I don't think he had to stand on his head. Like, this gives you hope. We briefly touched on it, but like, the one thing that they still have to find some way to get going is the power play, which remains quite poor and could really help your comeback efforts. Like, at some point you've got to make the Panthers pay for going to the box.
Yeah, it would have been a perfect spot to have a strong power play after the McAvoy goal stands, and Florida gets a delay of game penalty for challenging and not getting it right. That would have been a great time to really, even if you don't score on that, just use it to gain momentum. But that is not what happened. It was an awful power play following that. And sometimes it feels like in this series, like 50% of the Bruins power plays, they end up getting worse chances than the other team does shorthanded, and that they end up losing momentum because their power play, like, it's just so bad. But Montgomery after the game said, like, he seemed like genuinely concerned in that, like, we really just need to have a meeting about this. He was like, we need to put our heads together and figure out what the heck is going on. Cause he said they weren't buying into what the plan was on the power play. So it sounds like it's time to come up with a new plan. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something different, maybe drastically, maybe not, in game 6, because clearly that the power play isn't working and Montgomery is trying to just see if they can put their heads together and figure out what they would rather do or things that might work. So, and also in the same vein as special teams, stop taking the too many men on the ice penalties.
Oh my God.
6. Oh my gosh.
All right. So first off, on the power play, just want to say, like, that comment from Montgomery that you mentioned, and by the way, like, we're kind of losing Brian again. So if, you've gone a while without hearing from him, that we apologize.
We muted him and he's not allowed to talk.
Internet is what it is. Like, we can only do so much here. But that, it reminded me of comments that Montgomery made late in the regular season when the power play was struggling. And he was saying, like, they're just not seeing plays. Like, he was like, if I can see it from the bench, they should be able to see it. And that is what I thought of when he was saying, like, they're not buying into what we want to do. Is like, Montgomery clearly has certain plays in mind that he thinks are there, and the players are going out on the ice and not seeing it or not running those plays for whatever reason. So yeah, something's got to change. The too many men, the last one, there's certain situations here where I've said it's on Montgomery or on the coaching staff. One of them specifically that has bitten them a couple of times is, like, as we talked about before, defenseman in the penalty box leaves. There's now 3 defensemen on the ice. He has to change off for a forward, but another defenseman comes on too, and 2 guys have come on for 1 player. That to me is, like, on the staff and communication. The one last night in game 5 is not on the coaches. Like, that is all players, and 3 in particular worth highlighting. 1, Charlie Coyle. Know that your team is changing off behind you. Get the puck in deep. Instead, he tries to go side to side at the blue line, at the offensive blue line, and turns it over. And so the puck immediately comes back right to the bench. Got to be aware of the game situation. Get that puck in deep. So that's player 1. Player 2, Andrew Peak, is going to the bench for a change, sees the puck come his way, and turns around and stays on the ice. You can't fake out your teammates. Like, if you're going off, you got to get off. And trust that one of your other teammates is going to make the play on the puck. Player 2. Player 3, Hampus Lindholm jumping on the ice for Peak. Got to see him get off first. Like, don't jump on and try to make a play on the puck when he hasn't actually changed off. Montgomery has said this. If he's telling it to the media, I promise you he's telling the players. He has said, watch your guy change. Make sure he actually gets off the ice before you jump on and start to try to make a play. So, that's all on those players. I'm sorry, but there's just not really anything Jim Montgomery or another coach can do. These guys have been doing line changes their entire life. They are in the NHL. They know how a line change is supposed to work. They're just not using their heads. Like, you shouldn't need your coach to walk you through a line change mid-game.
Well, what he said was he actually was not blaming the defenseman at all in that situation. He was saying that puck has to get deep so that you can change out safely. The reason why it was chaos was because Pete kind of had to stay on the ice. There was a puck coming right into the Bruins end of the ice. Montour was about to go on a breakaway. And if they hadn't called too many men, they probably would have called a trip or interference because someone took out Montour as soon as he had the puck. So the too many men happened about 5 seconds before the trip. So it was going to be a penalty on the Bruins either way. And I think that it does start. The chaos all starts with, and it could have been worse. Like, it could have been worse. Montour could have got a clean break, because of the bad change. It was all. It all starts when Coyle slides the pass right across the offensive zone blue line rather than dumping it into a corner or something like that, and just not getting it deep enough for anybody to change out safely. So that's really where it went wrong. But in terms of what else the Bruins could still improve on for Game 6, take fewer penalties. Some of them are easy to not take, including too many men. But, there's been times in the series where it's like, okay, why are, like you mentioned the Maroon one, why is his stick up high? And why is it, and the geeky one in Game 5 where he just, or Game 4 where he just runs into Bobrovsky and doesn't know where, doesn't seem like he's aware of where he is on the ice. Tone that down. Find ways to stay more disciplined. I mean, and the chippiness was not there at all in Game 5. For this series, the 2 games the Bruins won were the 2 games where tensions weren't it was a hockey game. It wasn't like a boxing match the way that it was in the games the Bruins lost.
Yeah, so they give the Panthers 4 power plays in Game 5. The too many men, like we've covered, it just is what it is. The hooking call against Charlie Coyle was awful. There was no hook there. Lohrei could have been both going, but yeah, McAvoy's roughing call, a little soft, but what were his hands doing up high there? Again, just unnecessary. Just got to be in control. Pasternak's jab after the whistle in Game 4 as well. So I did think they were a little more disciplined in Game 5, but again, still gave Florida 4 power plays, which I'd say is too many. You got to keep it 3 or under. So still work to do there.
Yeah, I didn't think they were going to kill off all 4 of those. I'll be honest with you. Every time they went on the power play, I was like, well, here it is. You can't just keep doing this. You can't just keep putting yourself in that situation. But they were able to kill off. Nobody scored a power play goal in that game. Bruins, because they didn't look great on the power play, and Florida, they had some really good chances, but some good quick clears by the Bruins and some good saves by Swayman. And it didn't end up hurting them, but it came awfully close.
Yeah, I thought it was a better penalty killing effort for the Bruins. They'd given up 6 power play goals in the previous 3 games. I thought they were much better at killing plays, getting out of the zone. We had seen some Florida power plays in the previous 3 games where the puck just never left the zone. Thought the Bruins did a much better job of winning pucks back and getting clears.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought they were more just locked down. But anyway, we lost Brian. And he normally signs us off. I don't know if there's anything that you want to say, Scott, before I take over and I sign us off.
Nope, all good.
Okay, so Game 6 will be at the Garden on Friday night. We will be there. So, get your tickets if you want to go. I already bought my parking as soon as the game ended.
By the way, no time yet, but we'll know the time after the Colorado-Dallas game Wednesday night. Because it'll depend on that. If Colorado extends the series, I'm assuming it's going to be a 7 p.m. start. If Dallas ends it and Bruins-Panthers is the only game Friday night, it's probably 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I would think probably 8 or something. But yeah, it's still, if you check the schedule, it still says to be determined. So yeah, we'll keep you posted on Twitter with an update on that once we find out what time exactly it is on Friday. They still haven't announced a Game 7 start time yet either. It's all up in the air. But okay, so we are all wrapped up talking about Game 5. The Bruins force Game 6. We'll see if they can force a Game 7 as well. So thank you guys all for listening, and we will talk to you this weekend.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.